Well, thanks a lot. Great to see everybody. I know obviously here it's a Sunday, it's on the weekends, and my guess is that a lot more people will be checking this out on recording as well, but pretty strong turnout here. So great to see a lot of familiar faces. Really a couple things I'll just say quickly. I want to kind of do as much steering of the conversation as possible. We've got two awesome guests today, people who I've come to know over the past really 4 or 5 years now. But Jannell MacAulay, who is now on the, she's a member of the board for Team Red, White, and Blue, served a full career, 20 years in the Air Force, has an incredible TEDx talk that really talks about some of what she'll touch on today. And then Joel is, someone who has a very familiar face to Eagle Nation as an Eagle Leader Fellow, someone who I've spent time with, like in my own leadership seminar. He came down there, was a leader in Team RWB Philadelphia, and continues to serve the organization, through things like this. So super grateful to have both of you with us here today. Really, just a real quick overview of the major things we're going to talk about. We want to talk about goal setting. We want to talk about overcoming challenges, and then this idea of setting healthy habits. And that's really a big part of the driving theme for Eagle Take Flight. I'll just kind of make a suggestion. If you've not heard of this book, I'm guessing that most of you have, but if you have not, cannot recommend it enough. James Clear is the author. The book is called Atomic Habits. I've read it twice in 2020, really thinking hard about, how to set good, healthy habits, right? And there's a lot of good stuff in there that gets into the psychology of, saying things like I am versus I am going to, right? How do you work to change your identity to create these healthy habits and to make them more reflexive and more natural in your life? But we'll circle back to some of that stuff when Margaret and I talk a little bit about the Healthy Habits Goals Sheet. Want to spend as much time possible really talking about like goal setting. What is it? Why is it important? How do you do it? And then talking about just mindset and the idea of mindfulness and how is it that we can harness the power, as we've heard Apollo Ono talk about a lot. Jannell MacAulay talks about this a lot, right? Like the power of that 6-inch space in between your two ears is just incredible. And how can we overcome adversity by tapping into the power? So maybe I turn over to you first, Jannell, and then we'll go over to Joel. But we'd love to just hear some thoughts on this idea of goal setting in general, and for you in your experience, why is it so important? And any suggestions you have for everybody here to be as efficient as possible at it.
Of course. Well, I'm really happy to be here with Team Red, White, and Blue. I'm very excited to be a part of the board and just being involved in this new 2021 push, really trying to focus on that healthy habit formation. So with respect to goals, I'm going to kind of geek out on a little bit of the science with respect to how, we stick to things. And I'm going to speak in terms of goals versus values and important when you're putting together goals for yourself that you understand the intention or like the value that you're placing behind it. And I say that because if you think about goals, they're kind of like these milestones, right? Like these points where you're like, hey, I've accomplished something. Versus a value or an intention is like a direction. And so for example, if you're say in California and you set all your goals toward getting closer to the Pacific Ocean, but your values and the intention behind it is actually taking you more in an easterly direction, right? You can see that they're not really aligned, and you're going to have this misalignment and like why am I not achieving my goals, and why am I achieving my goals but not finding happiness with them? So I think it's really important to figure out not only what your goals are for your wellness and your health, or even your professional and personal goals, but understanding how they align with what you value. And so I think setting an intention along with your goals for the new year is a really important way to do that. So for example, for me, I'm setting the intention this year to be really intentional with my time. I don't know if anyone found last year with all of a sudden we're working from home, all of a sudden we're schooling from home. And I would get very upset at the end of the day when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm trying to like school my kids plus do my work. And at the end of the day, I feel like I accomplished none of that, and especially none of that very well. And most of it was because I wasn't setting proper time workouts, my work, and then my assisting my kids with their schooling. And so that's for me something that I really want to improve on this year, so that I can make sure I have good intentions and habit patterns with respect to my health and my wellness, practicing my mindfulness, which we can get in a little bit later, getting my workouts in, but then also being there when my family and my kids need me. And instead of just feeling discombobulated with all of it, my intention is to be more intentional with my time. And then I'm going to set goals with respect to doing that. So I hope that that's a little bit helpful, just in a big picture about how we set our goals, understanding what you value, setting an intention with that, and letting that be your direction, and then aligning your goals in that direction for the new year.
That's such an awesome reminder. And there's so many points I think that you just kind of covered in that 1 3-minute piece. It's awesome, Jannell. Thank you. Joel, how about you talking, maybe focus a little bit on, I know we were talking beforehand about some of the physical and the health goals that you've got, some thoughts about the goals that you set for this year and why it's important, and thoughts in general about the time of the year in January. Why are we talking about this now, right in the beginning of the year?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, again, thank you. Coming in from Philadelphia, we got some nice snow this morning, so it was great to, one of my goals is running, and I got to run out in the snow right before this, and not letting that affect the drive for it. So I think that's super important. That was really awesome to hear from Dr. Jannell too, hearing about the values as a basis of it, because that's kind of what I tie into. So going in my goals, I have 3 for 2021, all matched to my values. Fun, faith, family, fitness has always been the 4 that I surround everything I do by. So, all of my goals are going to match to that, so that I know that the energy level within me is going to hit that. And looking at my movement goals, I have a couple ambitious goals, right? But I'm not a diehard fan of large goals, which I know we'll cover a little bit later as well. For example, I'd love to take 3 minutes off my mile. That's a great goal, and that will make me a very fast runner, right? But not, if I do that, it'll be 2 years down the road. So, right. So making those goals in January, starting the beginning of the year, here's what I want to do. I want to knock out 5 seconds quicker per pace per month. Then I'm achieving my goal every month. I'm, it's that positive factor of crossing items out, and in January, I'm not a big fan of the term resolution either. It's kind of my new year goals, new year, new part of me for what I want to do, ties into nutrition, ties into wellness. They're all written down and shared with an accountability partner, someone that I know I can go to and say, hey, I just crushed my goal, right? And then someone to be proud, or to go, hey, I'm still steering clear of here. And it's someone who's got my back, got my support. And writing them down is awesome. Every day, I have my goals for 2021, and I break them down to how am I going to affect those goals for the month of January? How am I going to affect my goals for this week? How do I affect my goals today? And everything is handwritten down, crossed out. I'm not the most technological person in the world, but nothing feels better than a to-do list that you can cross out with a Sharpie at the end of the day and toss that piece of paper away. So hopefully I was able to answer some of that there, but really driving those bite-sized goals is going to make 2021 fantastic.
Awesome. And we'll shift over to overcoming adversity and mindset and mindfulness in 1 minute. I just got to share something in line with what you said is actually everyone will be the first to know. I just got an email a few hours ago from Tommy Caldwell. If anyone knows who Tommy Caldwell is, like one of the world's greatest rock climbers, basically he is on board to host another Team Red, White, and Blue rock climbing camp in 2022. So won't be this coming year, not too far from you, Jannell. Of course, Jannell is out in Salt Lake City area. Tommy is up in Estes Park, north of Boulder, north of Denver. But the reason I share that is because, those of you who are familiar with his story, if you watch the documentary called The Dawn Wall, you know that over a 7-year period, he eventually worked each little bit by little bit, year by year, to eventually be able to climb the most challenging free wall climb in the world on Yosemite's face of El Capitan, right? And it was all about those goals that, he was setting for himself to get to a certain point on the wall each year, right? And it got to a certain point where he did that each year, but it wasn't until 7 years that he was able to then stack all that together to then be able to get to the top, right? So sometimes if you do have these ambitious goals, if I want to be able to run an ultra marathon one day, you might not be able to get to it in 2021, but that's something you can work towards by maybe getting to a 10K or to a half marathon, right, in 2021, and then building on that. So like Joel said, stacking those smaller goals versus just seeing the one huge one that can feel so daunting. Awesome. So switching over and talking now about, overcoming challenges. So kick it to you, Jannell. So thoughts on how we can be mindful about the challenges that we identify, right? Looking at 2021, as we all know, right? 2020 threw 85 different curveballs everyone's way, as you alluded to already, from some of your own experience. But, thoughts about how we can be, mindful about like the challenge and the adversity that we face to be able to then use that in our process to overcome the adversity that we might run into that we don't know what it is right now.
Absolutely. That is something I think we're all struggling with. And just because it magically turned into 2021, it's still going to be a challenge for many of us, but it's how we approach it. And so the one thing I like to remind people is if you really focus on what you can control instead of what you can't control, it can really set yourself up to have the right mindset to really face the challenges that are in front of us throughout the new year. And so with that, what I mean are the things that we can control really are our thoughts and our actions. And with respect to that, I like to use mindfulness as a skill set to help us really, clear and control productive thoughts, right? And so part of that is about getting rid of any kind of negative thought patterns. And I think the skill set of mindfulness, which helps us live more present, is a great resource for that. And then layering on what we also can control is how we see the world around us, which is really related to things like optimism, and gratitude. And then with respect to our actions, I like to think about self-care. So what are the self-care practices and how are we setting proper healthy boundaries with respect to our work-rest cycles? So just what we can control, so thoughts and actions, and then the skill sets really are mindfulness to help with the thoughts, optimism, which then helps us layer in the productive thinking that we need. And then with respect to our actions, what are the self-care practices that we can set up for ourselves? We set boundaries with respect to that, because I think most of us struggled in 2020 with where do those work rest cycles lie, right? Because now, working virtually, we can technically work until all hours of the night, and it's becoming kind of a norm for us. We don't have those normal transitions where we commute to work or we commute to home. And so again, with mindfulness, I find a great way to build in those healthy boundaries and transitions. So whenever I leave my house and come back, before I even get out of my car, come in from the garage, I will do a mindful minute, right? So I even let the kids run into the house, and then I just sit there and I'll do kind of like 1 minute of just deep breathing, of focus, of a way to kind of remind myself of what I have control of, which is my ability to stay present and in this moment. And then I kind of engage and walk into the house. I also do the same thing before I sit down to work in the morning, right? Or sit down to doing a virtual event. I'll just take a minute to like take those deep breaths and really focus on where I want to be and where I want to have my intention for those following, whether it's 10 minutes or whether it's the next hour or two. So what we can control, I think, is a thing for us all to remember. And a good way to do that is by having some memory triggers when you do get stressed out, to think, what am I in control of right now? How can I change my thoughts? And what types of actions and self-care can I provide myself to help get through this moment? And that's where I think mindfulness can be very, very beneficial.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. You might have heard me say this before, Jannell, but like, I catch myself at least 5 times a day forgetting to breathe, right? Like usually when I'm focusing on something, whether it's cutting like peppers, or whether I'm thinking really hard on something, I'll be like, holy cow, like, of course, like I was still technically breathing, like I was getting enough oxygen into my body. But it's like, oh my goodness, I need to like focus on my breathing, right? And then I do that for like, just like 20 seconds. And it just brings me back to such a better place mentally that it's unbelievable. So the power of what you talk about and what your research is on and what you've spoken about and continue to speak about and train on is so crucial. And I just see it every single day in my own life. I think of you, like every time I forget to breathe, I'm like, remember to breathe. So great. Well, Joel, as part of Take Flight's, healthy habits track, right? Anyone who's opted into this is going to receive support in the resources in these 4 key areas. movement and mindfulness, nutrition and recovery. I know you're gonna be playing a big part of the focus on the nutrition section. Can you talk a little bit, one, about nutrition, like why it's important to you, and the impact or the domino effect that nutrition has on other aspects of your life and your overall health and wellness?
Yeah, for sure. So nutrition starts everything. I don't know there's any other better way to say it. Like, so just if you didn't see the quick bio on it, I work in a restaurant, a sustainable dining restaurant. And then I floor coach in fitness. So two things that I think are monumentally connected when it comes to it. So nutrition, important for me. It's a foundation of what we do. One of the first things we do in the morning is we either drink water, coffee, tea, or eat, right? So you're starting your day out with some aspect of nutrition. And then it's your fuel through the day. No matter what your personal goals are when it comes to fitness, it comes to life, nutrition has to be a base of those goals to keep you sustained, to keep you moving. Yeah, and it is whatever type of nutrition you go into, right? January is big time for carnivore diets. There is a plant-based diet. There is many types, and I don't like to use the word diet, but many different types of eating out there, all that can be beneficial for you as long as you understand it. So big into me for goal setting with nutrition and why nutrition is important to me is understanding exactly what I eat, and that's where it comes to start from. Looking at, one of my favorite acronyms out there is JERF, just eat real food. Knowing that the food is going to be, the better the food is, the better the fuel it's going to be for me. So for example, every Sunday, my daughter and I go to the produce store. We buy produce in person and we buy everything else grocery wise via an online order, and that takes away from myself getting out to getting and buying the stuff that might not be the best for me. That impulse decision's not there, which kind of helps my goal setting when it comes to nutrition. And then basing on anti-inflammatory, one of the biggest things with food, and we'll talk a little bit about this, I think later or next week, is the more you can take the nutrients of the food that you're eating, the better it's going to be for your body. The less you have to do to consume those nutrients, the more nutrients you are going to get. So, steering away from antibiotics, away from those type of foods, even if it's just small steps. Again, it's the same type conversation we had before. The standard American diet is delicious. I love it. I'm a big fan of lunch meat, cheese on white bread, huge fan of that for years, but it's something that was part of my goals last year, and in 2020, the challenges hit. So my advice, if challenges are coming at you, whether it's nutritional, movement, is to adjust your goals if necessary. If your goal last year was to hug as many people as you could, you might not have been able to achieve that goal. But if it was to virtually connect with people, you're still achieving the same thing. It comes with nutrition as well. Switching from white bread to wheat bread, switching from lunch meat to grilled chicken, switching from cheese to avocado, and doing this over a 5-month time, you can find your nutrition and your fuel for your body just getting better and better.
Awesome.
Apps, yeah. I'm sorry, are you doing question and answer now, or?
Yeah, just in 1 second. But also, I was just going to say, so we're doing good on time. Usually, all these things run over, but I think we're doing really well on time. So we got a bunch of pre-stacked questions that I can kick to Jannell and Joel. But if anyone here has got questions or wants to come off mute, you can do that. One thing I'd say, about all this is that nothing that you ever hear on any information session like this is like, wow, this whole radically new idea. But it's the power of leaning in and carving out moments of your day and periods of time, like 30 minutes like this, to focus on and to get your mind thinking about and then talking about these kinds of things, right? Because I'm reminded of the phrase from Zig Ziglar, right? Motivation doesn't last, much like bathing, therefore it's recommended every day. Something like that. I probably botched it a little bit, right? The whole idea of you've got to constantly be reminding yourself of these things. You heard both Joel and Jannell talk about examples of hey, last year, I might be someone who's a guest speaker on this because I'm known for doing this well, but guess what? We all still have slip ups, right? We all still get off course a little bit. And that's important to have that grace and that knowledge that very, very, very few people just crush it on the habit front all day long, every single day, week after week, right? And things like this hopefully help to bring people back to center and remind you about, oh yeah, that's important. I need to do this. I need to do that. So So with that, we'll push it to you, Joel, and then I got a whole bunch of other questions here. And for those who may not have other questions, but Amanda asked for Joel, can you speak to your sobriety journal and how it's impacted your ability to fulfill goals?
Yeah, absolutely. That's been a big driver for last year, because I've been sober since December 15th, 2019. So I went into 2020 as a brand new sober person, which definitely brought its own challenges, because I didn't expect a pandemic and the whole life shutting down. And it's been a huge step in my journey for many different ways. First of all, getting into sobriety, knowing it's a day by day item, kind of bounces into my goals. Same way, every day I wake up and, hey, I'm not going to drink today, right? And when I get to the end of the day, there's one goal knocked off for that day. But it's also, given me the support and the energy that I've needed to be where my number one goal, right? A better father, better husband. Those are always the first two for me. And it's helped me become a better person and focus more of my time and energy on, doing the other goals that I want to do: better nutrition, better movement. It's brought me to more of a positive place, of a place I need to be. And I've always been a positive person, but this has made me become more genuine to who I am. Hitting 2020 with the pandemic midway through the year, being able to still remain sober for that year has been something that every day I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, it's impressive. Well done, man. So great question here, and maybe push it to you, Jannell, and then back to you, Joel, for this. Like, when I do fall off the bandwagon, which I do every year, I think you're speaking for all of us, right? What's the best way to get back on the bandwagon? So Jannell, thoughts on this question that I'm sure you've heard 100 times over?
Absolutely. I think I will answer this by backing up real quick and just talking about the science of decision making, because every new year we tell ourselves, I want to eat better, I'm going to work out more, I'm going to spend time in recovery for my body, I'm going to pay attention to my family, all these things we want to do. And then, right, day one, the stress of life and the overwhelming amount of things and pressure that comes at us start to degrade our ability to stay focused, right, on those habits and that initial motivation we have to make the right decisions with respect to our health. But on the surface, it seems like, gosh, this is just easy advice. Why is it so difficult to do in reality? And a lot of that goes to what I would say two things. The first thing is that our physiology is really stacked against us. So we have basically an ancient brain that lives in this modern world of stress, right? And it was designed so that when we experience stress, we go into survival mode. Well, what happens now is we just don't experience stress when we're running from saber-toothed tigers like our ancestors. We experience stress when we're driving our cars. We experience these overwhelming amounts of stress when we're just dealing with our children on a day-to-day basis, trying to get them out the door in the morning to get to school on time, or get virtual school started. And so what happens is, if we haven't built up the psychological skill sets, then we go into survival mode. Our brain goes into that space. And that's where we make irrational or emotional decisions. And that's why it seems totally normal for us to grab the candy bar and the Monster drink and think, well, this is enough nutrition for me today. Or it's way easier to say, I'm going to just binge watch one more episode of Ozark tonight instead of going to bed and getting the sleep I need. And part of that, right? So our physiology is stacked against us. But the other thing is that our environment is stacked with unhealthy default options, right? The easy buttons that surround us are the Monster drink and the Snickers bar, are the Netflix binges, are just stressing out instead of learning skill sets to stay calm. And so that's why it's so important, and where the bulk of my work is in this idea of training our minds, right? Building up the psychological skill sets so that when we're in those stressful moments, we don't let our physiology turn us into these running from saber-toothed tiger survivors. Instead, we understand how to make rational decisions in that moment and think, no, I'm going to make myself a salad instead of choosing these unhealthy things. And really that goes toward, and I'm going to put another plug in for mindfulness again. The more you can kind of institute that practice for yourself, what it really does is that we have a monkey mind. And if you want to stay present and in the moment, where you can then see the rationality of the decisions that you make, then that is what that skill of mindfulness does for us. And if you look in the spectrum of the science around it, it can do things like heal people's psoriasis, improve their ability to stay focused on their physical activity goals, improve sleep quality, improve their relationships, this entire spectrum. And I really think it's because mindfulness addresses how we make decisions for ourselves. And instead of them coming from this emotional, stressful space. We make them from a rational, calm and focused space. And just like you were saying, Mike, I'll tell a quick story with that idea of just taking deep breaths. You know, when we go back to that ancient brain, when our ancestors were running from the saber-toothed tigers, as soon as they got to safety, what was the first thing that they did? They took a nice, long, deep exhale, right? It was like, oh, I am safe, right? I am okay. So what we have is this mind-body connection that when we take deep breaths, and especially those deep, long exhalations, we signal to ourselves, it's okay to be safe. Like, we're safe, we can relax, we can be calm in this moment. So when you feel all of that stress about like, I don't know how I'm going to get through the rest of the day, and my kids are driving me crazy, and I've got this pressure from work, blah, blah, blah. Just the sheer act of taking a couple deep breaths will then signal to the brain, right? I don't have to go into this survival mode. I can take those relaxing deep breaths. I am safe, I am calm, and now I can make rational decisions moving forward.
Awesome. Yeah, super powerful. And that was not just theoretical, but also very practical, right? Gave us some practical things to be able to do there in terms of like the power of being able to signal to our brain, right? And that goes back to a quote I've seen, you know, from Dr. Mike Gervais, right? Talking about the future is being able to train the brain like we train our bodies, right? Especially like in elite sports and elite athletes, you know, things like that. So really good. Joel, how about you? Thoughts on when falling off the bandwagon, especially from a nutrition standpoint? Like, what do you do? Like, what's the self-talk, all that good stuff?
Yeah, you know, it happens. And that's the number one thing I've talked to people about before. You live once, right? And what's the right thing for you at that moment? When it comes off to that. For example, if you want to give up cheese, and this happened to me myself, which is most experience I have is stuff that's happened to me. I gave up dairy, loved dairy. My son wanted pizza and he really wanted to have pizza, right? So my choice at that point was to have a slice of pizza with him. I fell off. I moved away. I don't like to say cheat. I like to say fell off the bandwagon because it's a choice that you make, right? And you just have to know what's the next step after that choice you make to get back on the bandwagon. So when it comes to nutrition, right? If you can avoid the candy bar, that's great. Sometimes that candy bar is so easy and accessible because like it's been said, it's very easy to get food that is not nutritionally healthier for you. If you have that, just know that, you know, the next day I'm back on my goal. You know, I enjoyed that moment. We're here once in life. So I enjoy the fact that I had that candy bar last night. Now today it's not going to happen. Here are the steps that I'm going to do for it, right? And I'm going to talk again, that accountability partner is super important. Going through a journey together, which I think is what we're doing, which I think is amazing. Any of these take flight tracks, you know, it's always been a basis for Team Red, White, and Blue. You know, we're going through this together as a team, you know, and being open and talking about that with your teammates helps you go a long way. It helps you get right back into that motivation, you know, to go for that healthier food or go for your goal or whatever your goal might be.
Yeah. And Joel, you and Jannell both touched on something I think that's really important that you've got to be aware of. And that is the default setting or the option is almost always not the healthy one, right? Whether it be, you know, what you consume from an information standpoint or food standpoint or your behavior, right? There's so much temptation all around us built into the attention economy and built into the entertainment economy and built into, right, just capitalism and how, like, you know, if it's out there and people are going to buy it, they're going to go buy it, right? They're going to produce it, you know? And I think that's a really, really important piece of insight that you both touched on, both directly and indirectly. As we're coming up on time here in a few minutes, I do have one more question for you each. Again, going to the art of the practical. Additional resources for us, like where can we turn to find some more specific information, more thoughts on what you've touched on, but if we want to go deeper, where can we go?
I'll start with respect to starting kind of a mindfulness journey. I would recommend a few books out there. If you're kind of already bought in, like, yes, I understand what mindfulness is, but I just want to learn more about it, I would read anything by Jon Kabat-Zinn. And that one of my favorite books is Wherever You Go, There You Are. It's a very easy read. It's straightforward. He talks about just a living present, the skill set of mindfulness and what it can do for you to kind of clear out those negative thought patterns. And it's not that we're like pushing thoughts away, it's acknowledging them and having a different relationship with them. Instead of having the self-talk and the thoughts that are going to tell you like, I can't do this, or it's too big for me, or this, these habits that I want to build or these goals I want to set, I'll never achieve, right? It's kind of having a different relationship with those thoughts. Like, why am I having those thoughts? And can I choose to have better ones? So Jon Kabat-Zinn is a great resource for that. If you're a skeptic, so I know some of you on this call might be like, I don't know, meditation, mindfulness, is just not my thing. I would recommend the book 10% Happier by Dan Harris. He really comes at it with that skeptic lens. In fact, his second book is called Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics. So either one of those books I would recommend to start out. He really dives into the science behind it and his own personal journey, and which I think most of us find meditation out of necessity. I know I did, right? I needed to find a solution to help me get out of my head and into my life because I was missing so much of it. And so those are great resources. Headspace is also a great app. Calm. I would recommend that you try to get 10 to 12 minutes of meditation and a mindfulness meditation in every day. I really equate it to mental push-ups, and that's how I teach it to military, law enforcement, right? Like the populations like us that get that. Think of it as I'm doing my physical workout and I'm also going to do my mental workout. So I'm going to do my mental push-ups, and you should do about 10 minutes of mental push-ups a day. These apps are helpful, but you also can just do them in silence with your breath. Anchor. Here's one last tip. Anchor on a particular sensation of your breathing, not just your breathing, because it's very nebulous. There's lots of things that happen. So maybe just the air going in and out of your nostrils, the rise or fall of your belly or chest. Concentrate on that sensation, focus all your attention on it. And when your mind drifts, which it will, even in the span of like a minute of mindfulness mental push-ups, when it drifts, acknowledge the thought, come right back to your breathing. And that's your push-up, right? You lose focus, you regain focus, you are doing a push-up for your attention system to stay more on what we would call the play button of our lives, right? So that's just some resources to get started from the mental or the mindfulness space. Also, I have a program called Warrior's Edge that is with Dr. Michael Gervais that Mike discussed. And I know we're having some discussions on hopefully maybe bringing it to the Team Red, White, and Blue population. But that's another great resource out there that is 8 hours of a course on how to build change your thoughts and change your mindset.
Awesome. Joel, over to you for 1 minute, and then we'll go to Margaret to walk us through the Healthy Habits Tracker.
Yeah, for sure. There, same thing. Based on nutrition, there are so many good books out there. And so many good books on goal setting. One of my favorites is Your Best Year Ever. I think it's a fabulous book on, looking forward. And then, I don't want to talk too many specifics of any of our food books out there, because there's a lot of people that will agree with them. There's a lot of people who are on the opposite side of that. But Dr. Andrew Weil has a lot of books on anti-inflammatory, which I think is, if you're going to start somewhere looking at your nutrition, looking after that first year, learning about the anti-inflammatory pyramid that he's created, and it's got everything that we want. It's got chocolate, it's got wine, it's got meat, it's got cheese. It doesn't mean you have to eat all that stuff or have to drink all that stuff, but it's there. And the reasoning of why anti-inflammatory is going to help kind of drive your body. So many good resources online as well, or myself. I love talking about nutrition. I love talking about goal setting. I love talking about any kind of thing to do with fitness. Reach out to me, joel.stark@teamrwb.org, or on Facebook or Instagram. I don't use Facebook as more. I learned that in a great seminar down in Pinehurst. Yeah, little shout out to that. But on Instagram or all through those.
Awesome, Joel. Thank you. Margaret.
Awesome. So I know we kept you guys a little bit over time, but thank you for hanging in there. We wanted to just show you the Healthy Habits track really quick, because it is a little bit more complicated than some of the other ones. So I'm just going to share my screen super quick and walk you through this. So over here on this side, that's your spot to put in what's important to you this year, whether it's a certain workout, rucking, cycling, anything like that. Please feel free to do that. Mine says drink more water and read every night before bed. And then every day you can just check it off. And if you're joining us a little bit late, no worries. You can just start on the 3rd, or you could even just push it back. So, and we've got some suggestions down here at the bottom for you. So please feel free to pull from those, but you're also not limited to those, if that makes sense. And then other than that, just wanted to say that we are here for you. Please post in the Team Red, White, and Blue app in the Healthy Habits track events every day. We can comment, we can talk to you, we can encourage you. And I know Joel, Mike will be in there, happy to answer any questions you guys have. So yeah, thank you for joining and looking forward to killing the rest of January with you guys.
Outstanding. Well, thanks, Margaret. Appreciate all the hard work from the team. You, Amanda, everybody who's been working really hard on this. I know it's on the weekend and we're still kind of, getting going here in 2021, but I think it really kind of kicks off in earnest for a lot of people tomorrow, being that it's that first Monday. So thanks a lot for everyone for making time on this. Please, as the recording comes out, share it with other people across the organization, on social media, in your chapters, et cetera. Let them know, if you found this conversation valuable. I know I sure did. And so thanks again for what you do for Team Red, White, and Blue, and continuing to drive our mission forward, right? Forging America's leading veteran health and wellness community.
And Mike, really quick, I'm so sorry, I forgot to say this earlier. Joel is going to be joining us next week for a special Eagle Eats session. So we're going to be cooking. That will obviously have to be a little bit longer than 30 minutes. But
Awesome.
So just keep checking your emails. And Jannell will also be joining us later this month to talk all about mindfulness on one of these. So yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.